Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpecker's Deep Dive. My name is Jeff Ferris. Welcome to the Woodpecker's Model Shop. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Woodpecker's new StealthStop Miter Gauge Fence for your table saw miter gauge. We're going to take a look at how to make an interface plate to use that on pretty much any miter gauge ever made. Okay, let's get started. Now first, I'd like to show you just how simple it is to install this on a SawStop and quite a few other miter gauges. All miter gauges have some method of attaching a face to the miter gauge. Now, in the SawStop, you can see that it has slots. In a lot of others, those are holes. The holes are a little bit more complicated, but with slots, this couldn't be simpler. All we have to do is take the miter gauge fence, the two bolts that attach the fence to the miter gauge, drop them in the slots, and tighten them up. That's all there is to it. Now, on this old vintage Delta off a Unisaw, it's a little bit more complicated, but we're going to show you how to take care of that. On this one, you can see that instead of slots, it has holes. Now these holes go all the way through, which is great. There are some miter gauges where the hole only goes through the front face and you have to attach it inside the casting. But on this one, you can see the holes go all the way through from the front to the back, and so that's going to simplify things. So what we're going to do is make a little board out of 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood that's going to fit between the miter gauge fence and the miter gauge. First thing we're going to do is rip a piece of plywood to the same width as the miter gauge fence, which is about 2 1/4, just a little bit more. Now I'm going to take this over to the miter saw and I'm going to cut it 1.5 inches longer than the width of the miter gauge face. So the miter gauge is 7 inches wide, so I'm going to cut my piece of plywood 8.5 inches long. So the holes for the miter gauge are 5 inches apart and 7/8 of an inch off the bottom. So we're going to set those up to drill holes in the same location on our interface board. So to keep everything centered, on our 8.5 inch long piece, I'm going to put 4 1/4 on each edge with my centering rule. And now I can mark the center. And then for my 5-inch spacing, I just want to go 2.5 each side of that. Now I'll square those lines across. Now we need to come up from the bottom 7/8 of an inch. Just going to use the scribing lines in my delve square to give my 7/8 mark. There and there. Now we need to lay out the holes to mount the fence to the interface board. So from the bottom of my miter gauge to the center of the track is 1 3/8. So that's where we want the holes on our interface board. So we're going to go to 1 3/8, strike a line there, do the same thing out on this side. And now we'll come in 3/4 of an inch from each side. Now for the two holes that attach the board to the miter gauge, we're going to drill a countersunk hole so that the bolt doesn't interfere with the miter gauge. So we've got that set up at 7/8 of an inch. Now for the other 2 holes, we want to go just straight through with a 1/4 inch diameter hole. So we'll change bits. Now we'll move our fence back for that 1 3/8. And we're ready to drill. So these 2 bolts are going to come in your package, and they're the ones you'll use to attach the StealthStop fence to the interface plate. These 2, you're going to have to get at the hardware store because there are just too many different variations of the miter gauge. You know, they're all over the place in size, hole depth. So you just need to get a couple of bolts that will attach the 1/2 inch plywood to your miter gauge. So in my case, those are number 10, 24 thread per inch flathead screws that are 2 inches long. And we'll put a washer on the back side and a nut. And you can see on the front side that our countersink was just the right depth and the heads are just below the surface of the plywood. Now before we tighten anything up, we're going to go ahead and put the other 2 bolts in. And we're just going to start the track nut. Now we'll drop that in the miter gauge slot. Make sure everything is loose and slide the fence on. Now I'm going to push down, just a little bit of pressure down on my interface plate and tighten the bolts holding the interface plate to the miter gauge. Now I'll put a little bit of pressure down on the StealthStop fence and tighten up the track nuts that hold that on. Now we'll check the fit, and you can see that it runs perfectly smooth, no binding anywhere along, and it feels just great. So this is the wrong miter gauge. This miter gauge is not a very good fit in this slot, but let's see if our setup with the StealthStop Miter Gauge Fence does what it's supposed to do. Spot on, just exactly where we want it, dead square and exactly the length that we needed to. Hey folks, thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this look at our new StealthStop Miter Gauge Fence. If you enjoyed the show today, be sure and give us a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. That way you'll know about every one of our videos right when they come out. Now, if you'd like more information about the StealthStop Miter Gauge Fence, the original product video is right over here, and down in the description, you'll find a link that'll take you to the web page. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Woodpecker's Deep Dive.